if you want to go ahead about the user research, that'd be cool.
I guess Sam is at your topic. Sorry, I don't have the sheet up yet.
Yeah, he was just saying he was having internet problems, so might not be there.
Yeah, can everybody still hear me?
I can hear you.
Yep.
Okay. Let me share my screen, and basically I'll just give an update on where we're at with this situation. So yeah, as I shared before the break, there is in flight this user research around a couple different topics relevant to CMDs, which I put into this RFC. And so the next step in the process has been defining the participants. So I just wanted to open it up to folks that we have this. This is the collateral from the agency we're working with. This is a description of how folks will be recruited. And so we have this survey here, as well as like a set of follow-up questions that they do on a call with them to ask them to learn more about the details of their work, particularly with regards to how well they understand containers. And so that so far has resulted in this document, which is linked in there, but let me see if I can change the permissions so everybody can look at it. Yeah, we have about a dozen candidates in here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a column here for community comments. The client, I guess, is me, since I'm sort of directing things with them. And if folks are keen, you are welcome to go through this list and see the who's on the after about a week of looking. We expect this to be a longer list, certainly, but who are the possible people we could talk to, and some context on what languages they use, like what's the scale of their application, how long they've been working with containers, and their experience with Kubernetes, their job title, that kind of thing. So please feel free to edit column C here if there's anybody you think is an interesting candidate to talk to. And similarly, this document, the recruiting package, if you want to, let me make sure that this is also editable. If folks want to, I'm not sure I can change the editability of this, but you should be able to get a sense from this. What are the questions we're using to screen folks? Yeah, so basically, we have people in the pipeline, and we can start scheduling interviews as soon as next week for the first phase of research, which is as detailed in the RFC, which is kind of focused more around the different segments of app developers using Buildpacks as well as Docker images, and maybe what might be their goals, challenges, and motivations to switch to Buildpacks from other tools. Any questions, or what questions do folks have about sort of the process so far, how to get involved, ideas about what we should change?
Looks well thought out. I don't have anything to add myself.
Cool. Well, once we, please, other folks jump in or message me on Slack or anything. Once we start scheduling folks for the first round of interviews, I will add those to, I'll let folks know about that in Slack. And as always, anybody wants to either help conduct interviews or observe or take notes, would very much appreciate any help from those who are interested.
Thanks, Sam. I don't see anything else on the agenda. Joe, did you want to talk about the stack pack stuff now, or do you want to wait until Emily was around later, or what?
I'll give you an overview of what we were going to talk about, but yeah, I think it's probably best just to wait for Emily. Mostly, want Jesse and Stephen to hear. So before the holiday, Emily and I started talking about what the first phase of introducing stack packs would be. And there are a few PRs that capture this, so I'll post them in the chat. There's 2 spec PRs that start to sketch out this first phase, which is essentially just adding mix-in validation. So it's really we're not even getting to stack packs yet. And what we've uncovered is that the detect phase is the ideal place to do this, but it doesn't have all the information from the stack at that point. The first place you might get that is the analyzer. So the idea we were sort of flirting with was switching the order of analyze and detect, which for the most part is fine, but in practice, and here's the draft PR where I started to work on that, I ran into some problems. And that's because the analyzer accepts or requires the group toml that's output from the detector to know, currently to know which layers it's going to analyze. And then some decisions about API compatibility version. I actually think some of what it's doing today is wrong, like especially with regards to API compatibility version, because I think it's using, like if you were to switch versions between 2 different builds, you actually want to look at the API compatibility version of the old build pack, not the new build pack. So in switching the order, we could replace group toml with the metadata that's on the previous image and the cache too, to determine which build packs were used. I think the disadvantage of that is you might restore a layer that you weren't going to use because that build pack was removed from the next build, but like that's not that big a deal. I think like there's actually what I've realized is there's trade-offs in like regardless of which order, and I think that's probably acceptable. But the bigger problem is we just don't have all the information we need. We don't have the new version of the build pack. So if you had multiple versions of a build pack, you can't simply like take the latest one to figure out its API compatibility version, all that. So if we had more information on the label, it might work, but we don't today. So that's kind of what I'm up against now. And starting to think about if we left them in the same order, detect and then analyze, what could we do to make that work? And so something I was talking to Jesse about this morning was maybe detect doesn't necessarily finish the detection. It's not kind of like, these are the groups that might work depending on mix-ins. And then a later step like analyze could sort of finish up and select a group based on what mix-ins are satisfied or not satisfied. So that's sort of the crux of the problem where we're at right now.
Can you talk more about the mix-in validation issue that makes you want to swap the order?
Yeah, I think it's essentially that at detect you don't have the run image mix-ins. I think that's really the only problem.
Can we have 2 analyze phases, or can detect just look at the do another analyze? Like that's
yeah, that actually,
I'd like to avoid that. I'd like to avoid that actually.
That yeah, I assumed you wouldn't like that. I don't know the implications, but I assumed that there was some separation of concerns between those containers that was important.
It's the authentication to the registries, right? Is one big deal. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's the authentication thing. So you'd really need 2 separate containers.
Yeah, it'd have to be like a pre-analyze.
There's no way to like drop that before jumping into the detect scripts.
What about this prepare step?
Suddenly this prepare step. Yeah, like that might be the first, like just call it prepare
Well,
and it would do, because we've already talked about, like there's not a, right now lifecycle will fail in randomly weird situations because it hasn't yet determined whether it can get to the run images and whether it can like get to the cache images. Like those happen like after detect, right? Because you don't need an image yet. And so the prepare phase could also be a good place to like do some upfront validation for the registries that you intend to push to, the registries that you're going to pull from.
Yeah, I definitely, even if we broke it out into an entirely separate step by itself, it could run in parallel to other containers on a real platform that wants strong separation. The two things that would make me want to keep detect, not put this in detect, Joe, you're talking about that option, is it's helpful to have detector and builder not do any OCI related to anything, just be good at running the build packs. We're using that to run V3 builds on Cloud Foundry, for instance, where there's no images because you can just pull the detector and builder in and then run it on top of the build lifecycle. And the other thing is it should be, I think, just security wise, it feels better for me if it's possible to do a build where the credentials are never involved when build pack code that's untrusted could be executed in the same container, right? In case there's some kind of escape, and that would stop us from doing that, and that for the platform case. And so, I think I'd like another step would be my preference.
No, I think that sounds great. I was kind of trying to avoid that as I was thinking through things, but I hadn't thought about leveraging prepare for it. The only problem is it kind of starts to make prepare like a required thing versus an optional thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that.
What if prepare is a required thing, but then it has plugins or something for platforms? I don't know.
Oh, like you can run some subset of it. Is that kind of?
Yeah, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I don't mind it being more of a required thing because, like I was saying yesterday, I feel like your platform has to do some setup. Like Tecton has this phase where it does some things. I think that's somewhat inevitable. And prepare is sort of an attempt to standardize those things, or at least put them in a single place where you don't have to just kind of YOLO your own setup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And having, I forgot what I was going to say, having the authentic, like having a step between all of the unauthenticated steps that's authenticated. I feel like at some point there'll be some need where we'll need to perform those operations. Oh, and having creator as a thing that runs through the whole process, right, and makes local builds really fast, makes me a lot less worried about introducing more steps for the cloud builds.
Yeah,
that's an
because
interesting way
creator
to
won't
think
be
about
doing
it.
stack packs. Is pack basically
least
doing
at
its own
first.
creator? Is that kind of?
Or it uses, like, if there's no stack packs, it just runs creator. If there are stack packs, it can't, something like that.
Yeah, just worry about introducing a step that's required on cloud that's not required by pack, right? Because if packs, or is pack going to run creator or prepare all the time?
Can't creator run prepare? It just runs all in one container locally.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah,
something came up yesterday that we were worried about that. I can't remember what.
There's one thing we can't do with creator, which is extend the run image, right? At least, it'd be pretty crazy. But so that's the only thing where locally, pack would have to run another container in parallel. But that could run in parallel to the normal build, so it wouldn't slow it down.
This takes a little bit of like when we're talking about having like a config file, like we were talking about yesterday, it gets a little weird because like pack is currently the one who's processing project toml and creating an order toml. So if at some point we introduce prepare that spits out an order toml, then that would be problematic for pack, right? It would have to not do that.
To do it in parallel, you mean?
Or it would just not have to do it because it takes its own CLIR flags for the build packs, right? So it doesn't want to run that part of prepare. And so that's That's why it was optional, I think. It was one of the reasons we were talking about it being
Yeah.
optional. And like you said, that could still be a plugin thing, Stephen, right? We're like, we do the things you have to do, like inspect images, make sure registries are good. But
on the topic of swapping, of the other option of swapping the analyze and detect, I like detect before analyze because it feels like we should know what build packs we're going to use in the build before we start figuring out what we want to know about the previous build, just as an architectural thing, and I don't see a reason for it to happen before. So it also makes me lean towards just saying, yeah, we have another phase now.
Yeah, as I was saying, you're making some compromises. Like I'm just gonna analyze these things, whatever. I kind of like the way you framed it, though, Stephen. It's like privileged or has creds, doesn't, has creds, doesn't. Like that just makes a lot of sense from that sort of like dropping in, dropping out.
That's why we have the different stages in the first place.
Yep. All right. Well, I definitely want to talk to Emily before starting in on anything.
Be a pretty big breaking change, right? Requiring all platforms to have a new phase. I guess right now you wouldn't have to. Like, I don't know. Like, should it be? I don't know. I could see it being optional unless you're doing stack packs still, right? Because currently Tecton does its own owning. You don't have to know the run mix-ins if you're not going to do. Or I guess we want them to eventually, though, so that we get the validation.
Right. I mean, right now Pack is doing it all, right? The mix-in validation.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like it's not broken right now, but it's like I don't know if it is a breaking change, is what I'm thinking.
Well, if you don't use Creator, if you use the individual steps today, I guess if you try to do it, who's going to be doing the validation? Is it going to be detect, and is it going to expect a run, a list of run mix-ins?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So it could fail without that, then, right?
Yeah. What Emily and I were talking about was that detect would take the output from analyze, which is like an analyze TOML, I think, as one of its inputs, which has all the information it needs, but it also has some stuff it doesn't need. So we could, have prepare, pass some of that along too.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of like the Tecton template today. If it upgrades to this vNext of lifecycle and it doesn't have the prepare statement, are there Tecton workflows that are just going to fail without an analyzed, list of mix-ins? I guess we could make the validation dependent on if you give it that list of mix-ins or something like that, right?
Yeah, I see.
We can also make it a major version change or whatever.
We do have a platform API.
Exactly. Yeah. We can just use that.
Cool. Is there anything else, or should we call this one early?
Yeah, I say we call it.
Yeah.
Thanks, bye.
See you.
Bye.